I'm Donna Wilder.
And I'm Janie Donaldson. Welcome to Quilt Central, where we celebrate quilting and everyday living.
Today we're going to visit the Museum of the American Quilter Society, where we're going to look at some outstanding quilts, many from their permanent collection.
We're so glad you joined us. Stay tuned for Quilt Central.
Funding for Quilt Central has been provided by the American Quilter Society, dedicated to promoting today's quilter. Sulky of America, taking creativity to new heights with decorated threads, stabilizers, and books. Fairfield, maker of Polyfill Fiberfill, pillow, batting, and foam products. Gamble Quilting Machine Company. With a quick hands-on test, you will discover why quilters choose Gamble. Blumenthal Lansing Company, America's button source. Free Spirit Fabrics, quilting fabrics with style. Bernina of America. Nothing sews like a Bernina. Nothing. Quilting Machines International, providing quilting machines and supplies for the world. Quilt Central, celebrating quilting in everyday living with your hosts Jane Donaldson and Donna Wilder.
We're here in the museum gallery with the director, Victoria Farrell. I'm so excited to be here.
Jane, we're delighted to have you here at the Museum of the American Quilter Society, or MAX as we often call our museum. It's wonderful that we're here in this center gallery at the museum because the quilts in this gallery are really the reason the museum came about at all. This gallery features the quilts that are in our own collection, which is a collection of quilts made from the 1980s on. Bill and Meredith Schrader, Paducah residents who founded the museum, wanted to share with quilters year-round the wonderful work that's being done today, and that's really at the heart of why the museum was founded in April of 1991.
I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the quilts that are displayed here.
Well, these quilts, as I mentioned, are all quilts that were made in the 1980s on. They're really a wonderful look at the variety of quilts that are being made and the incredible excellence that we're seeing. We feature in this gallery quilts that are both handmade and machine-made. We feature quilts that are innovative in design and traditional in design. And one of the things that we really emphasize here at the museum in general is the connection between quilts and their makers, between quilts and their times. Oftentimes, we'll see quilts really connect with the lives of their makers. The quilt that's here with us, in fact, right now, is the Beatles quilt, and that's a wonderful example. Two sisters in Michigan created this quilt because they really enjoyed listening to the Beatles music in the 1960s, and it became a very important part of their lives. And they kind of brought together old and new in the quilt as well. They used a traditional album format, but brought to it a kind of new twist in that all of the blocks in this particular album are actually albums that were record albums. So each one features a particular album that was recorded by the Beatles.
Do you also have some antique quilts in the museum?
We focus on collecting contemporary quilts ourselves, but we do borrow antique quilts from private and public collections. As a museum, we feel it's very important for us to show quilting as a continuum. What's happening today didn't just drop out of the sky from nowhere. Instead, it really does develop from what has happened in the past. So in one of our galleries, we always try to include an exhibit of antique quilts. And often these will be from a particular period of time, a particular part of the country. Sometimes they're connected with a particular culture. And sometimes it's a thematic exhibit that's pulled from many collections.
So then you would have some quilts from children also.
Yes, we do think it's very important to encourage young people to make quilts as well. One of the ways we do that is through our annual quilt block contest sponsored by P&B Textiles. We invite schools within a 300-mile radius of Paducah to involve their students in making quilt blocks. We bring them here, we display them, and often along with that exhibit we also display work done by young people in schools throughout the country as well.
Now, have you documented a lot of these quilts?
Well, one of the most exciting things for us is when we're able to document an exhibit with an exhibit catalog. One of the most exciting things we've done recently is to actually document our own collection. And we have a wonderful book on our collection called Max Quilts, the Founders Collection, and that was published in 2001 in time for our 10th anniversary. And this book gives a look at the quilts in our collection, stories connected with them, and also a history of the first 10 years of the museum.
Does the museum have anything other than quilts?
The museum doesn't just display quilts. We also are involved with a lot of other programs that connect people with quilts and other arts and crafts. We sponsor some wonderful workshops that are often 4 or 5 days long that allow people to come in and really focus on developing their skills with an expert from the field. We really have students come in from around the world to take those workshops. We also offer classes for young people to become involved in quilt making. We have an annual festival that we call the Arts in Action Festival, and that really brings people together with a wide range of arts. And we also have a bookstore that is part of our gift shop that allows people to learn more about quilt making in general. One of the other things connected with our exhibit program is that we do have several contests each year that allow people to enter. We mentioned the school block contest for children, and we also have a quilt contest for adults.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to take some of those classes myself. Also, when people come to Paducah for the International AQS show, they can find you here too.
It's extraordinary that week in Paducah when the AQS Quilt Show is being held. The whole city is really themed for quilts, and we have so many extraordinary people who come from all over the world to both visit and to serve as vendors at different venues around town. And of course, there are the extraordinary quilts that are part of the AQS show. We normally welcome about 10,000 visitors during that period of time here at the museum. Many of them come to visit their favorite quilts from that have won past AQS shows, and we try to display many of those here at the museum, and they also come to see our other exhibits. But really, Quilt Show Week isn't the only time that we see many visitors here at the Museum of the American Quilters Society. We actually welcome over 45,000 people each year. Paducah, fortunately, is very conveniently located for travel. We are within driving distance of a day for a great portion of the country. We're on a major highway, so a lot of people make trips here several times a year as they travel north and south or east or west.
That is really wonderful. I have been to that show, and that is well worth the travel. And when people come here, how do they find you?
People have many ways they can find out about what's going on here and how to actually arrive here at our door. We do have a website, which is a wonderful way of getting basic information and also finding very up-to-date information about programs. That's located at www.quiltmuseum.org. And on that site, there's also a lot of information about becoming involved in our programs, as well as information about the activities that are happening and the exhibits that are here.
Well, I am just so excited, and I would love to show some of the quilts here in the gallery.
That sounds wonderful. We'd love to share them with you. One of the wonderful things about the Museum of the American Quilters Society is that when people visit, they can see antique quilts and then walk into this gallery and see quilts from our Founders collection, quilts made in the 1980s on. This is a great example of the kind of quilts in here. This one's called Air Show by Jonathan Shannon, and it's a winner of the past AQS Quilt Show's Best of Show Award. It's a great example of the way that a lot of today's quilt makers blend old and new. You'll notice around the edges a wonderful border of stars that probably looks a lot to you like a scrap quilt that you might have seen. But the center of it is an original design that Jonathan developed. He'd always really liked biplanes, and you can tell from the quilt he's created that he doesn't just like the way they look, but he loves the way they move. You can see the wings coming out over the edge of the circle and the wonderful quilting that gives a sense of movement through air. It's wonderful. It's one of the people's favorite quilts in the museum, but people have many favorites because we have a lot of wonderful quilts. Let's take a look at another one over here.
Okay, I'd love to.
You know, quilts have a kind of drama from a distance, but they often have a lot of wonderful details when you get up close. Take a look over here at Mama's Garden by Ann Oliver. You'll notice that what looks like one kind of fabric in the leaf from the distance turns out to have many different prints in it. And you can see the wonderful stitching. You can even see her name embroidered there. This is a great example of wonderful hand technique used to create a design. Look at the way that she's modified her quilting lines in this outer area, putting some close together, some far apart to create the diamond pattern. And a lot of times those are things that you would miss if you didn't have that opportunity to see it in person.
Yeah, it's impressive.
And we have some wonderful examples of machine work as well. Let's take a look at one of those. One of the areas of quilt making that has really flourished in the 1990s on is machine quilt making, and this is a wonderful example of one of the early leading pieces. This is called Floral Urns, and it's by Deborah Wagner, and it was winner of the Bernina Excellence in Workmanship Award at the AQS Quilt Show. Totally machine made. You'll see that Deborah has used a trapunto, a special technique she developed herself for working with the machine, all kinds of different quilting, meandering, and other kinds of designs. And I learned something about this shortly ago. I, for a long time, had never really looked at it closely and seen all of the embroidery around the applique pieces. And
it's just a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
All the details, just perfect.
It's machine done as well. It's a great example of the kind of work that we're seeing, and we have quite a few pieces in the collection that are machine made. Yes. But you know, I mentioned that we did have a third gallery here at the museum, and I'd like to show you the quilts that are in there.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
In Gallery 3, we display quilts that we borrowed from other quilt makers or their owners. These are usually quilts that have been made recently, and it's a wonderful way of looking at a wider range of works. One of the exhibits we have here is our annual contest, and this is an example of the quilt from the Bear's Paw contest. Each year we select a particular traditional pattern and challenge quilt makers to use that pattern and develop an innovative quilt based on it. One of the things this exhibit really allows us to do is to share with visitors that great American tradition of taking traditional patterns and using them in innovative ways, making the pattern personal by calling on their own experiences, the environment, nature, or whatever inspires them most.
And I'd like to thank you for a wonderful, wonderful tour through the museum. And now, let's see what's happening with Donna Wilder at Quilt Central.
Our decorating today takes a 180. We've gone from a northeast room to a southwest room. Look at the before. And now see what we have done. Laura Lee Fritz supplied us with lots of wall hangings to embellish this room. And you'll notice we're going to concentrate today on the thread sketching little wall hanging, and that's going to be demonstrated by our guest today. Joining me is Joyce Drexler. Joyce is the Creative Director for Sulky of America, the manufacturer of threads and stabilizers. Welcome, Joyce.
Well, it's always a pleasure, Donna. And I'm really excited about showing you the thread sketching. It's such an easy thing to do, and anyone who has a straight stitch machine can do this.
Great. Well, you're also the author of the Sulky Concepts in Quilting, and that's where the pattern came from, is it not?
That's
Great.
Right.
Well, let's take a look.
Now, this pattern was actually designed by Cheryl Phillips, and we used this thread sketching technique where we used 2 threads in the needle to create a design. And to get your design onto a water-soluble stabilizer, this one is ultra heavy. So all you have to do to get the pattern from not shifting when you're going to be tracing is take the KK invisible temporary spray adhesive and just slightly spray it on the,
Well, it is invisible
paper.
too.
You don't see it, and it's odorless,
Great.
non-toxic, and that will hold your pattern while you're tracing it with a permanent ink marker. And you would just use this and just trace right over the lines. And as you can see, when you lift that, now that it's stuck, you can see that it's right on the design on the actual water soluble now.
Right,
and if you flip over, you can see that we have one all done.
Okay.
Now, what we have done is created a background for this Indian to be on. And in order to do that, we decided to frame 3 sides of it with a strip of the darker blue fabric, the model fabric. If you could hand me that little damp towel that we have, I want to show them that a really cool way of getting this pattern to stay in place while you're stitching is to take a damp towel and simply lightly go across. Well, I'll just do this one little section. Just lightly dampen it, and it'll stick in place by just dampening it. Now, I think with the hot lights, we may have having it coming where it's not sticking.
Holding as well.
So if you want to, you can also use the KK again to hold it in place.
Okay.
Once we have that done, we can take that one off. As you can see, this one's on here. And what we did in order to get ready for the quilting, you need to do your layering, and you have to prepare your chevron side that we added on.
That is so pretty.
Isn't that pretty?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you exactly how to make that.
All right.
When we developed the chevron, we used an iron-on stabilizer. And that allows us to be able to iron the pieces in place.
Oh, what a
have
good idea.
a pattern stabilization that keeps, when we're stitching each piece on, from shifting. So what I do is just iron the first little triangle, and there's a little pattern in the book for the triangle. Once you have that ironed on, then your next piece would be to take a strip and iron it down after you've sewn it.
Right.
You line it up so the raw
Does it matter how far you sew it, or is it any length?
You just
it won't
want
matter?
to sew beyond it.
Okay.
Beyond it. And then just like you would turn back any type of quilted stitch
You have to be
piece,
careful with the iron.
you want to just be ironing onto the piece here.
Right.
And this shows it already ironed down. And then you would add piece after piece, building yourself a bridge all the way up. But this helps you keep them from stretching out of place, because these are being sewn on the bias here, so we want to make sure that we haven't stretched it. Now here you can see I've flipped it over so you can see that there's that little triangle. And as we've come forward, we've used brighter and brighter fabrics. But when we get up to the top of this, we have used some of the background fabric that we originally did the sketching on. And as you can see with those beautiful colors in there, it just makes it more of an illusion of the background.
And the fabrics are unique because they aren't a solid,
No, they're
totally,
not solid.
and they look hand-dyed,
That's
so
it,
it's
hand-dyed.
great.
And what you would do here is to make sure that you trim them off to the size that the pattern says, and top stitch them down.
And that holds it in place
That
as well.
holds it in place, and that's what we've done over here.
Okay.
Now that prepared your top. To get your 3 layers, your backing, your batting, and your top to stay together, you can use the temporary spray adhesive and spray the backing fabric on the wrong side.
Okay.
Lay your batting down. Then spray the back of your top side and lay it down. And you won't have to use pins then as you're doing the thread sketch work.
Oh, that's good. And then you don't have to keep removing those pins and working around them.
Right. And because this has been also sprayed down with the KK, everything stays in place nicely. So I can take that one off.
Now, when did you take out the stabilizer?
Little note off here.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I left these pins on here just to show you that with a lot of handling, you may find that you might want to pin the corners down. Just because we are going to be putting it under the machine and moving it about to do the thread sketching. Now, to do that actual sketching of the thread, you want to use a 30 weight rayon thread. And this is a heavier weight thread. And what we have done is use 2 threads through the same needle. And when you want to do that, you need to make sure you use a big needle. This is 100. Some people call it a 16, depending on if you use the European or American version. So that allows your thread to go through the needle and not break.
I have a hard time threading 1 strand through. How do you get 2 strands through there?
Well, actually, what I do is I just hold one up out of the way,
And then thread the other one through the bottom.
one through
Well, that's
the. Yeah.
good. That's good
And
to know.
if you have a machine where you could put 1 thread on each side of your tension disc, that's what you should do as you're threading
Because
the
then it
machine.
keeps them apart and
That's
they're
right.
not twisting as they
And
go.
you can use the twin needle
Right.
extra spool pin holder so that you can put both threads on the top of your machine.
Good.
And then all we did was just stitch right over that, and it works beautifully.
Okay.
Now in the bobbin, I should mention that in the bobbin we did use,
Take that.
you can use brown or you can use a white thread in the
Let's turn
bobbin.
that over so they
now
can see.
we used a matching brown thread for this portion, but when we go to do the quilting, we're going to use the white. Because when you have such a heavy thread on top, sometimes it wants to pull up on the bobbin thread, even though you've lowered the top tension. And if you use a similar color in the bobbin, then it won't matter if it did pull up. So we use a 40 weight in the bobbin, not the 30 weight.
Okay.
Okay? So that at least gets us to that point. Now, I would like to do some stitching.
Okay.
And what I have done here is we're using a metallic thread. And this is a multicolored thread that's metallic. And I have to use a metallic needle, like I was saying, with the 100 size. You want to lower your feed dog action.
Okay.
Those are the little teeth that usually feed your machine along. You want
So this is free motion.
free
Is that what-
motion work. We've lowered that. We have also reduced the top tension.
Okay.
That's very important. And if you are using a big spool like this one, a king spool, you can use the larger spool holder, but if you're using a smaller spool like this one, always use the small spool holder. And I did want to point out that these spools do have a snap end on them. They just simply snap open so you can get the thread end.
That's nice.
And when you're done, you can put it away, and it just snaps right closed. So.
I get all that kind of everything going together in my sewing box.
But this really makes it easy for you. Now, if we just move this stuff out of the
Okay.
way, we'll do some quilting here. When I do this, I want to start off with the machine pressure bar down, make sure it's down. We have put on the darning or the quilting foot. Some machines have a clear one, some have a metal one. And this makes it very easy for you to have the fabric being held down. What happens is, as the needle goes down, this goes down. And as the needle comes up, it lifts up so you can actually move the fabric. So I'm going to run the machine at an even speed and just move it slowly with my hands and just go in as far as I want to.
And this is basically doing the background quilting.
Yes, and if you have a needle down position on your machine that where it will stop when you're done with the needle down, then you should use that feature. Once you've started, you can clip these extra threads off. And some people have different methods of doing this. I like to kind of hold on to my fabric so that I can handle it easily. And then just maneuver it. That's all there is to
that
it.
looks great.
But isn't it pretty thread?
Yes. Well, now, did you have another step here that we need to look at, or was that the last one?
The finishing is simply finishing it off and binding it, trimming it away, and you're all done. This is the one that has the quilting on it.
Great.
So that's about it.
Well, it looks great. You always have good ideas. And now let's go to Janie, where she's going to show us how to do perfect circles on the long arm quilting machine.
I'm going to show you how to make the circles just like we did in the Southwestern bedroom. It used to be hard to make circles because you had to draw them on, and then you'd be pushing the long arm machine. At some point you have to pull back and you'd get a little bump in the circle. But now with the new circle makers, you wouldn't believe how easy it is. It has a little pivot point. You mark the centers of your circles, and that's the real easy way to come up with the middle of your circle. And then you decide the size, and you can slide the bar out. So you can have up to a 16-inch circle with this particular kind of circle maker. And there's also an attachment to it that will make fan shapes, which you can swing in about a 20-inch half circle and move your fabric and swing the other half of the 20-inch circle and get 40-inch circles. And they're perfect every time. I now have the little pin dropped in the point of the circle maker, so I am at a place where the machine will pivot, and it's almost a hands-off operation. I'll start for you. I'm going to go around this circle more than one time, because if you want your circle color to show up, if you're doing a celestial looking quilt, or if you're doing seat cushions and you want it to be really sturdy, you can actually run that thread around there 2 or 3 times to darken it up for a colorful accent. Circles are some of the best things to use in artistic quilts. If you know what a Bargello quilt is, those kinds of quilts, they just need something special on top, but circles can go at any location and you can overlap them anywhere you want, use variegated threads, and really come out with an artistic looking piece. The other thing you can do is you can make them for seat cushions, and you can bring those in at any increment you might want, even 1/4-inch circles radiating out, and you can get this real planetary look on quilts now. And we have so much in our world that is a dyed fabric that lends itself to that sort of circle quilting. I just wanted you to know how neat and easy this is, and that's how to do a perfect circle.
Visit the Quilt Central website at www.quiltcentraltv.com for more information on this program.
I love the little decorative touches they did in the Southwestern room.
Well, it was fun to see how they took the buttons and tied them onto the leather thongs and then twisted them around the bedposts.
Yes.
And if you like these decorating tips, next time we're going to work with florals.
See you then on Quilt Central.
Funding for Quilt Central has been provided by the American Quilter Society, dedicated to promoting today's quilter. Sulky of America, taking creativity to new heights with decorated threads, stabilizers, and books. Fairfield, maker of polyfill fiberfill, pillow, batting, and foam products. Gamble Quilting Machine Company. With a quick hands-on test, you will discover why quilters choose Gamble. Blumenthal Lansing Company, America's button source. Free Spirit Fabrics, quilting fabrics with style. Bernina of America, nothing sews like a Bernina. Nothing. Quilting Machines International, providing quilting machines and supplies for the world.